On a mountain named Lin Ki, there was a young man attempting to climb it, but this disturbed two celestial beings who were conversing above. They decided to punish him. He was repeatedly struck by lightning and forced to replant incense on the mountain before escaping. The villagers below, witnessing such lightning strikes, assumed the young man was more good than bad. The village chief believed they should have faith in him because, despite his mischievous behavior in the village, he was still a descendant of the village. They had to request that the celestial beings accept him, and his name was Bok Tu Thuan. After being struck by lightning, the celestial beings descended to meet him. One of them was Lai Tanhao, the mountain's patriarch. He asked why the young man repeatedly burned black incense to provoke him. The young man explained that he had lost his parents early and was cared for by the villagers. Now, he wanted to enter Lin Ki Mountain to cultivate and repay the villagers who had taken care of him. Impressed by his sense of gratitude, Lai Tanhao accepted him. However, as soon as the villagers realized he could leave, they were overjoyed, as their chickens would no longer be stolen. Yet, Tu Thuan warned them that he would visit the village frequently, causing fear and leading them to lock up all the chickens. Lai Tanhao then placed him in the sect and allowed him to practice independently. He was released into the Fire Tao room. The head of this room was Trong Dai Hai. Although Tu Thuan seemed weak, Lai Tanhao's personal recommendation led Trong Dai Hai to take him under his wing for training. Suddenly, a troublemaker arrived, jealous of Tu Thuan. This young man, Hua Baotai, believed Tu Thuan had taken his spot and accumulated spiritual stones. When Hua Baotai attacked Tu Thuan, Dai Hai had to fend off the blow. Hua Baotai transformed into a bird using his own blood and flew straight at Tu Thuan. In response, Tu Thuan revealed a death character on his hand, and Hua Baotai fled. Dai Hai wants him not to worry because this spell will not come true if he does not engage in combat. He then led him to see the work in this fire peach room, where they are responsible for preparing and processing food for the elders. Because the work here is very lucrative, many people want to get in. Later, Xiao Chun met 8 other senior brothers, but Dai Hai wanted him to greet them later. He led him to choose a divine weapon. It is said to be a divine weapon, but it is actually just choosing a pot. As long as he carries a pot on his back, others will know he is a disciple of the fire peach room and will not dare to cause trouble. He chose all day to get a pot small enough to carry. In the evening, he began to study and practice to achieve immortality. He had just arrived here and was already cursed with death, but he would not let his beautiful days end so soon, so he had to work hard. He then began to sit and cultivate the initial realms, but after sitting for an hour, he could not feel anything. Suddenly, he heard a noise in the kitchen and went to look. He saw the senior brothers drinking lightly in there. Dai Hai discovered him and pulled him in because he had seen, so they would not let him go easily. As for Bao Tai, he did not believe Xiao Chun could help for a lifetime in the fire peach room, so he decided to stake out here to watch. Xiao Chun was fed a 1,000-year-old Ganoderma by the senior brothers because he also stole food like them. Now he was in the same boat, so he could not tattle. And since he had just started cultivating, eating Ganoderma would help him in his cultivation. They also taught him a few tricks to skimp, but he even contributed another trick to them. Everyone began to like Xiao Chun and even decided to give him things to use gradually. After a night of cultivation, Xiao Chun no longer felt the pain as at the beginning. He cultivated for many days afterward and began to have spiritual energy. Then he felt hungry, so he took out the seeds that the senior brother gave him to see how to eat. He put them in the pot to cook and then met the senior brothers again. They thought he had gone mad from cultivation, but unexpectedly, he officially entered the first level of qi cultivation. They told him about the 3 forms of cultivation. The first is cultivation with medicinal herbs, the second is through weapons, and the third is by choosing to anger heaven and earth. Whenever one cultivates, the object that has undergone that cultivation will leave its own mark. He realized that the seed given by his senior brother bore a mark, so he suspected that his pot could refine objects. He decided to hide the pot so that others wouldn't find out. He continued his cultivation, while Bao Tai remained outside, keeping an eye on him. After several days of practice and meditation, his senior brothers wondered how he was progressing. Suddenly, his scream sounded different this time, prompting them to investigate. He was currently refining his sword. However, during this attempt, the pot exhibited a strange phenomenon, drawing something from him. He noticed that his hair had turned gray, leading him to believe that the pot had absorbed his lifespan. Furious, he threw it away, but it clung to him, fueling his anger toward Bao Tai. He blamed Bao Tai for driving him to such extreme cultivation and causing this mistake. He rushed out to confront Bao Tai, but Dai Hai informed him that Bao Tai seemed to have disappeared for several days. Devastated by the loss of lifespan, he learned from his senior brothers about a task system that could extend his life. The next day, Tu Thuan prepared to embark on a mission, leaving the fire peach room to buy materials. There, he unexpectedly encountered Bao Tai. Bao Tai had waited for him, but just as Tu Thuan wanted to reclaim his lost lifespan, he noticed that Bao Tai had two others with him. Tu Thuan decided to flee, running toward the mountains. Bao Tai pursued him, and another person blocked his path, a woman wearing a hat, a special supervisor sent to oversee the battle. Tu Thuan's senior brothers, worried about his safety, were also hindered by another supervisor named Tran Phi. Since Tran Phi's strength rivaled Dai Hai's, they needed to overcome him to rescue Tu Thuan. As they fought, the remaining supervisor warned that someone was about to die. When they arrived, Dai Hai feared that Tu Thuan was severely injured, but it turned out that he was the one attacking Bao Tai. Tu Thuan decided to spare Bao Tai's life, vowing to take it if he couldn't regain his lost lifespan. Meanwhile, his senior brothers pretended that Tu Thuan was injured. Bao Tai revealed that Tu Thuan had reached the third level of cultivation, leaving his senior brothers both surprised and impressed. Suddenly, a bell rang, and the senior brothers announced that the promotion exam was approaching. The exam is equal for all and selects only the 3 strongest individuals, so it is considered very difficult. However, their fire peach room has never participated before. Yet, Xiao Chun asked the senior brothers to let him take the exam to bring fame to the fire peach room. In the following days, the fire peach room closed its doors for cultivation. On the day of the exam, a girl from the prestigious Ho family drew attention because her brother was a high-level disciple. However, she did not attract as much attention as the fact that someone from the fire peach room was officially participating this year. Xiao Chun and 2 senior brothers planned to let others fight and struggle while they would benefit as the opportunistic fishermen. They had practiced a lot for this day, but things did not go as Xiao Chun had expected. When his 2 senior brothers got excited and started fighting, allowing him to go ahead, he easily ran past while others struggled in the restrictive area. The 2 senior brothers followed and encountered Tran Phi, who was still resentful towards Dai Hai, so Dai Hai stopped to deal with him. He broke the bridge and blinded Tran Phi, causing him to be tied up by vines. Xiao Chun reached the final obstacle, which was to cross several rocks. He climbed to the last rock and was almost blown off by the wind, but he clung on. Then a bird flew away, causing him to fall, but fortunately, he landed on the other side. He and the 2 senior brothers were close to reaching the goal, but they did not hurry. Instead, Xiao Chun stopped to wait for those coming behind. He blocked them and negotiated with them. He believed they did not want to leave the fire peach room, so he wanted to sell the 3 slots to the highest bidders. Everyone thought the lowest price he offered was like robbery. But considering the opportunity for advancement, the price seemed too cheap. He and the 2 senior brothers had to act to the extent that everyone offered all their assets to buy. The law enforcement officer was angry with this action and thought Xiao Chun was breaking the law. But Xiao Chun asked himself what law he had broken? He had reviewed nearly 400 laws he had memorized, and none prohibited selling promotion slots. Then everyone started bidding, but anything under 200 spirit stones was not acceptable. Just then, the young lady arrived and offered 10 times the price. Seeing the opportunity to make a fortune, Xiao Chun let her pass without much discussion. After selling 2 slots, Tran Phi arrived and was dissatisfied with this behavior. He wanted the law enforcement officer to arrest all 3 for the elder law enforcement officer to handle. But an upright tree does not fear falling straight. If there is no violation, there is nothing to fear. However, they were led to the other side of the gate. Xiao Chun realized he had been tricked, but it was too late when Tran Phi threw him through the door, making the 3rd slot unsellable. Somehow, Tran Phi ended up going through the gate first. It turned out that earlier, Xiao Chun's pot had knocked Tran Phi through before him. Although Tran Phi was furious, the number of people who had secured their places could not be changed. The group led by Tu Thuan later found that they had acquired a substantial amount of capital and decided to spend it. However, Lai, the scholar, unexpectedly invited all 3 of them inside, leaving their money bag abandoned on the ground. Tu Thuan wanted Lai to examine the situation and provide an explanation. Yet, Lai insisted that Tu Thuan focus on diligent cultivation, otherwise, he would be thrown out of the village. Tu Thuan accidentally fell from a tree and encountered Hao Van Phi, who had been sent by Lai to pick him up. Van Phi guided him to change into the uniform and began instructing him on the basics. The first thing Tu Thuan needed to learn was alchemy. However, to study it, he had to complete the first 8 levels of qi cultivation, as alchemy could enhance longevity. He was taken to the library, where he needed to learn most of what Van Phi instructed to pass the herb recognition test. Tu Thuan perused the books and documents there. Suddenly, a young man below asked him about the book's location. Tu Thuan directed him, but more people approached with similar inquiries. Van Phi was surprised by Tu Thuan's quick memorization abilities. Tu Thuan then asked the elder to unseal a particular scroll. However, due to the elder's failing eyesight, Tu Thuan had to guide him through the process. Upon unsealing it, the elder realized that the magic Tu Thuan wanted to learn was perilous and challenging. Still, Tu Thuan confidently believed he could self-study. He began collecting herbs, relying on his prior experience. Unexpectedly, he encountered Tran Phi, who confused him and caused him to run into a stone pillar where another disciple was taking an exam. Now trapped inside the examination area, Tu Thuan dared not leave due to fear of Tran Phi outside. He reluctantly had to take the exam, drawing a symbol for himself. Coincidentally, a senior sister was also attempting the same test. She is considered a talent for having completed the challenge of the 9 pillars with the highest score. Meanwhile, Xiao Thuan was informed about the test, which involved separating the herbs, and his task was to reassemble them. With his extraordinary memory, he was not daunted by this test at all. He then worked hard on the test, while everyone else outside was focused on observing and eagerly awaiting the results from the senior sister on the other side. When the test ended, both sides emerged, but the senior sister received the most attention. The young lady accidentally noticed Xiao Thuan and decided to inquire about him. He was informed that the senior sister on the other side was Zhou Xianqi. She was the first person to surpass the 9 challenges of the pillars with the highest record and was soon to face the 10th pillar. Xiao Thuan began to dream about achieving the same feat one day and becoming famous. However, while everyone was waiting for Zhou Xianqi's results, nothing happened. But the pillar where Xiao Thuan had taken the test showed higher results, and the symbol he had drawn for himself was a turtle. The elders were discussing and recognized that Zhou Xianqi, a student of Mr. Li, was about to top the 10 challenges of the pillars and would be a promising talent. But contrary to everyone's expectations, someone surpassed Zhou Xianqi's score. No one knew who the turtle symbol belonged to, and Xiao Thuan did not claim it immediately but watched to see how people reacted. Suddenly, a member of the law enforcement, Qian Daijin, came to congratulate Zhou Xianqi on her success in topping the list. But Zhou Xianqi turned back inside, leading him to mistakenly believe she was shy and hiding. When others tried to tell him the truth, he became irritable. Zhou Xianqi then retook the test with better results than before, but she still couldn't surpass Xiao Thuan's score, which made her frustrated and determined to exceed it next time. Xiao Thuan knew the exact score that made the young lady suspicious of him. For a whole week, Zhou Xianqi still couldn't surpass the turtle. Everyone began to speculate about the identity of the turtle symbol's owner, suspecting it must belong to an old monk. Suddenly, Qian Daijin appeared and offered a reward for information about the turtle. Anyone with information should come forward, capturing the person would be even better, and anyone supporting the turtle would be suppressed by him. Tu Thuan had intended to reveal the truth to gain admiration, but now it seems unlikely. The young lady wanted to speak up in defense of the turtle, but Tu Thuan had to pull her away before they were caught. She couldn't understand why he intervened. Although she was Van Phi's younger sister, she lacked any talent and had secured her admission here through his influence. If another genius appeared, she felt obligated to support them. Hearing this, Tu Thuan was pleased. He also learned that standing atop the 10 stone pillars would yield a reward, a precious artifact. However, he decided to exercise restraint. While the artifact sounded appealing, he was currently a fugitive. Suddenly, the young lady approached, bringing food for him and noticing his diligent studies. She hoped he could surpass her brother, Van Phi, and reach a new realm. Rumor had it that this new level could extend one's lifespan by 100 years. Tu Thuan was delighted, and in a moment of excitement, he accidentally held her hand, causing both of them to blush and pull away. With a clear goal in mind, Tu Thuan resolved to conquer the 10 stone pillars and hoped the artifact would help him reach the new realm. The elders were astonished that someone had achieved this feat in such a short time. They suspected foul play from another sect or that Lai, the scholar, had deliberately targeted the artifact. A few months later, a decree was issued to hunt down the owner of the turtle emblem. Tu Thuan was already at the top of 9 pillars. As Dai Kim struggled to capture him, Tran Phi suggested a solution. One night, Tu Thuan seized the opportunity when no one was around and completed the final pillar. As he entered the examination area, the guards surrounded him, waiting to see who would emerge. Just as the 10th pillar was completed, the elders realized they had successfully cornered the fugitive. It had been 1,000 years since anyone achieved this feat with the highest score. Tu Thuan received the artifact from the forge but found himself surrounded. Before the door opened, he tossed the pot to divert attention and slipped away. Still, someone noticed and pursued him. Escaping to the mountains, he couldn't shake off his pursuer. Suddenly, the young lady stepped forward to defend the turtle's identity, leading to a confrontation. Tu Thuan didn't want her to risk her safety for him, but Lai arrived and ordered everyone to disperse. Just as Tu Thuan breathed a sigh of relief, he slipped and fell down the mountain. Fortunately, Tu Thuan managed to keep the artifact safe, but his luck took a turn for the worse. Just as he retrieved the elixir pill, it slipped from his grasp and was snatched by a chicken. The chicken swallowed it whole and transformed into a phoenix, flying away. The tale of the turtle gradually became a legend, while Tu Thuan grew accustomed to life here. One night, he began practicing cultivation using the manual he had obtained from the monastery. His body cracked open, and by morning, he was ravenous and had to relieve himself by a bamboo tree. Unfortunately, the remedy was ineffective, and the elder's warnings about side effects proved true. Still harboring resentment toward the chickens, Tu Thuan decided to cook them all that evening. As the chickens chased a grasshopper, the poultry herder noticed their disappearance. The next morning, Tom Kai announced that Lai's prized chickens had been stolen. These chickens were used for medicinal purposes, and anyone with information about the thief would receive a precious amulet from Tom Kai. Everyone vowed not to spare the chicken thief, but Tu Thuan saw an opportunity. During a discussion, one young man suggested dividing the chickens and assigning a caretaker. Whoever lost a chicken would be deemed the thief. Tu Thuan disagreed, fearing that this method would inadvertently lead to false accusations. The real thief would remain calm. Instead, he proposed gathering the chickens together and overseeing them as a team. Tom Kai accepted his suggestion, appointing Tu Thuan as the chicken protection team leader. With this role, Tu Thuan could more easily catch the chickens. He continued using his old trick, but unfortunately, Tom Kai arrived to inspect. Tu Thuan worried he had been exposed, but Tom Kai merely reprimanded 2 guards for dozing off during their watch. To explain the missing chickens, Tu Thuan pretended he had fought the thief but lacked the strength to prevent their escape. Successfully deceiving Tom Kai, Tu Thuan received the amulet as a reward. His trustworthiness grew. For several consecutive days, he led the chicken protection team, allowing him to focus on cultivation. The chicken bone served as fertilizer for plants. As the chickens dwindled, Tu Thuan visited the fire peach room to inform his senior brothers about the chicken theft. He continued catching chickens elsewhere and practicing diligently. One night, he was attacked. Dodging blows, he realized his body had become resilient. He called out to the assailant, who turned out to be Lai, the scholar. Lai wondered how Tu Thuan had gained weight and remained robust despite hunger. Tu Thuan improvised, claiming he had chewed bamboo shoots. Lai inspected the chicken bones, satisfied with the explanation. He took him flying and dropped him in a forest full of dangers. He was chased by snakes from one place to another and was forced to beg Mr. Lai for mercy. He was ready to accept punishment, so he was given a chance. There would be a competition soon. Either he would make it into the top 5, or he would stay here for the rest of his life. After that, he began to train. He even practiced with the wooden sword and the jade pendant that Zhou Xianqi had given him. He discovered some interesting techniques and decided to learn them. The first was to control the water wheel with his mind, which he failed at, so he learned the second technique, which was to control spiritual energy. However, his spiritual energy was low, so he decided to exchange bamboo for elixirs. He drank all the elixirs and gained abundant spiritual energy. Thanks to that, he was able to learn the moves he wanted. The next morning, upon waking up, he saw a hole in the ceiling. He remembered that he had shot through the ceiling the night before. The competition had also arrived. This time, there were a few notable characters. The first was the older brother who guarded the door at the last promotion test, Feng Yan. And a girl considered one of the 4 great beauties, Du Langfei. The elder then noticed that Mr. Lai had disappeared. At that moment, he went to drag Xiao Thuan to the competition because it was about to start. He was not fully prepared but was still dragged away without being able to resist. He was dropped right in the middle of the competition, and others thought he was related to Mr. Lai. Lang Fei reached out to help him up, but a young man stopped her because he questioned what right he had to touch the beauty. The competition then officially began. Feng Yan recognized him and was surprised that in just half a year, he was skilled enough to participate in this tournament. He was about to step back a bit when he was startled by a snake and raised his hand to participate first. Mr. Lai believed that he needed to be under pressure to perform well, but the elder said that the bag in front of them was for drawing lots. Numbers close to each other would compete. Xiao Thuan was lucky to draw number 12, so now he needed to focus on who his opponent would be. The first few matches were brutal, with the losers getting beaten up badly, which made Xiao Thuan use all his charms to protect his body first. Feng Yan also quickly entered the arena and defeated his opponent in one move. The next match was Lang Fei's. She kept dodging attacks, and when she saw fit, she launched a move that filled the arena with smoke and dust. From within the smoke, she knocked out her opponent, leading up to Xiao Thuan's final match. Tu Thuan intended to escape, but Lai, the scholar, caught him and forced him back to the arena. Tu Thuan pleaded with another senior brother to go easy on him. The young man lunged with his sword, feinting one way and striking from another. However, Tu Thuan successfully blocked the attack using a pot and accidentally hit the young man in the face. Despite winning, Tu Thuan faced ridicule for his cautious fighting style. The elder demanded that he relinquish all his tools, allowing him to keep only one item. Tu Thuan pulled out so many items that people thought he was running a grocery store. However, Feng Vim refused to underestimate him. Tu Thuan realized that one more victory would secure his place in the top 5. He hoped to avoid facing opponents too formidable. Unfortunately, Feng Vim stepped forward and declared that whoever was ranked second should come up next. To Tu Thuan's dismay, he was that second-ranked fighter. Although he stepped forward, Tu Thuan kept turning away, frustrating Feng Vim. Tu Thuan projected confidence, as if he possessed some secret technique. Feng Vim hesitated but eventually attacked. Tu Thuan stalled, knowing he had little time. He decided to take a risk. Feng Vim, impatient, lunged first. Tu Thuan dodged and pretended to be overwhelmed. Then, he grabbed Feng Vim's leg, asking for a chance to demonstrate his move. He did not want to lose more face, so he yielded to him. However, he then held the sword pointing for nearly 2 hours. He could not launch any attack. His sword fell, so he assumed that he had made a move and charged forward. He kept using talismans to block the strikes while running away. Feng Vim kept attacking until he ran out of talismans. But his jade pendant blew Feng Vim away, causing him injury. Out of anger, Feng Vim resorted to blood magic. He launched an attack towards Tu Thuan. With a flick of his hand, he sent the wooden sword flying. It completely deflected Feng Vim's strike. Feng Vim's real sword broke, and he couldn't believe he had lost to Tu Thuan. Meanwhile, Lai's junior sister watched, curious about the student he had brought. In the subsequent rounds, Tu Thuan advanced to the semifinals without having to fight. Lang Fei and the remaining opponent would compete for a spot in the finals against Tu Thuan. The semifinal match showcased 2 skilled fighters. His agility was such that others found it difficult to keep up. The young man decided on a strategy of quick battle for a quick victory. He launched a move that struck the ground, propelling Lang Fei into the air and throwing stones up, but she filled the entire arena with smoke and dust. Although the young man dodged the attack from the wooden sword, Lang Fei aimed for a critical weakness, leaving him no choice but to lose. Xiao Thuan then told Lang Fei to rest and regain her strength because he was bound to lose anyway. She thought he was mocking her, so she told him to show his face. However, it was nearly evening before the two began their match. Xiao Thuan intended to concede defeat quickly, but she angrily refused to allow it. In her anger, Lang Fei charged at Xiao Thuan with her sword, but her strike shattered his protective jade pendant and plunged into his body. Everyone thought he had been hit for real because he fell down and seemed to be on the verge of joining his parents in the afterlife. Fortunately, he had padded his clothing with extra layers, and the strike had not reached his body. Lang Fei fainted from exhaustion, and Xiao Thuan was declared the winner. Obviously, Lang Fei's fans were dissatisfied and disagreed with the result. Lang Fei also woke up and refused to accept it, claiming she had fainted from being startled by him. She demanded a rematch even though Xiao Thuan was willing to concede the victory to her. Still, she was not satisfied and challenged him to a contest of herbal knowledge. If he won, she would give him a spiritual elixir to break through his current realm. Seeing the opportunity for a good deal, Xiao Thuan was ready to compete. Mr. Lai decided on the test. He threw out a seed and let it grow, declaring that whoever could name the most types of plants on the tree would win. Everyone was confident that Lang Fei would win easily because she was among the top 10 high scorers in the first 5 stone pillars. But that was because they did not know that Xiao Thuan was the top scorer in all 10 stone pillars. After careful examination, Lang Fei reported that she could only identify 8 types. Mr. Lai did not underestimate her because he had meticulously grafted the branch, making it difficult to recognize. While Lang Fei identified 8 types, Xiao Thuan claimed he could see 67 more. Obviously, he named each type to prove it. The elder wanted Mr. Lai to recognize Xiao Thuan's talent, as he might be a promising talent. Xiao Thuan listed all the types, convincing Lang Fei beyond doubt. The elder declared him the overall winner. Xiao Thuan then used the spiritual elixir given by Lang Fei to level up, and suddenly Bao Tai came looking for him. After a long time, Bao Tai finally made it here and sought out Tu Thuan to apologize. In the past, he had offended Tu Thuan due to his reckless and arrogant behavior. Thanks to Tu Thuan's attack, Bao Tai worked diligently to reach this point and seek guidance from him. However, Tu Thuan wanted the young man to leave once he had no further business. Bao Tai informed Tu Thuan about Tran Fai, who had previously plotted against him and trapped him here. This revelation came after Tu Thuan defeated Feng Vim, Bao Tai's cousin. Bao Tai expressed his willingness to become Tu Thuan's junior disciple. Subsequently, Bao Tai shared what he knew with Tu Thuan. He explained that if Tu Thuan cultivated to a higher realm and refined immortal pills, he could extend his lifespan by 100 years. Motivated by this information, Tu Thuan resolved to learn more. In the following days, news spread that Tu Thuan successfully passed 10 alchemy furnaces and produced a mid-grade spiritual pill. His reputation soared, attracting many seeking guidance. However, both Tran Fai and Feng Vim were waiting for an opportunity to harm him. After teaching others, Tu Thuan was approached by a young lady named Tu Muoi. She admired his teaching methods and considered him better than her brother, Van Phi. Tu Thuan offered some advice to Van Phi, but suddenly, Bao Tai rushed in with urgent news. Despite Tu Thuan's privacy, Bao Tai insisted on being included. Bao Tai warned Tu Thuan of impending danger, urging him to flee. Unfortunately, Tu Thuan couldn't escape in time, as Dai Kim's attack caught him off guard. Now, Tu Thuan, Lang Fai, and Feng Vim would venture outside to find Van Phi, who had gone missing in the mountains. Tu Muoi and others bid them farewell, providing Tu Thuan with items to protect him on the journey. Determined to find Van Phi's master, Tu Thuan promised to return safely. Together, they set off on a flying boat. Although Tu Thuan was relatively inexperienced, he was allowed to participate in this critical mission due to his punishment for failing to cultivate Lingji mushrooms. Remembering Bao Tai's advice, Tu Thuan remained vigilant against Feng Vim. As they arrived at the Thong Thien River, rich in spiritual energy, Tu Thuan felt uneasy leaving his sect's territory. Lac Tien Mountain awaited them, shrouded in darkness. Tu Thuan preferred to wait until morning, but Lang Fai insisted on going ahead. Suddenly, a flesh-eating flower ensnared Tu Thuan, and without Lang Fai's warning, he might have encountered even greater danger. Now, a mysterious presence approached their group, and all three fled. Tu Thuan's heart raced, especially when he discovered a dead rabbit poisoned by a two-headed bat. Despite the fear, he had grown accustomed to such situations. The monster's hand had grasped the tree trunk, but when the snake crawled out, it did not check any further and left. The entire forest was nearly destroyed by that monster. Feng Yen encouraged him, saying there were even scarier things in this forest. However, he took the opportunity to sprinkle some kind of powder on him. It was something that attracted two-headed bats, and they immediately swarmed him, making him run away, and Lang Fai found it difficult to follow. Later, Feng Yen sat leisurely waiting for Lang Fai to arrive, confident that Xiao Thuan could not escape from the bats. As soon as Lang Fai returned, she wanted to run and find Xiao Thuan but was stopped by Feng Yen, while Xiao Thuan had to sprint with all his might. He ran to a dead end with no other way out. Lang Fai waited for him all night, thinking he had passed away, which broke her heart. But before she could shed a tear, he returned to reunite, and they both went back into the cave to hear him cry. He cried loudly while talking about the previous night when he had run into a dead end and had to turn back to fight. Thus, he had annihilated the entire flock of bats and did not forget to collect their teeth as medicinal ingredients. After hearing his tale of victory, the three decided to set off. Suddenly, a giant eye appeared, causing Xiao Thuan to faint, and when he woke up, he learned that it was a divine beast whose gaze could drain the life force of others. He fainted again, and when he woke up, he had lost Feng Yen. But Feng Yen returned with news that he had found a clue, although the compass pointed to a desolate place. Feng Yen used magic to hear the voice that Yunfei had left behind. Feng Yen said that there was a family named Lac Tran in the mountains that also served the sect, so they would go there to inquire. Xiao Thuan originally wanted to return to report to the sect, but both of them forbade him. By evening, the two encountered an old man who recognized that they were two demigods and did not welcome them. At that time, the three had reached the Lac Tran family, but the place was gloomy and strange. Moreover, a man with an indistinct face appeared, scaring Xiao Thuan out of his wits, but he turned out to be the guide. Because of his timidity, Xiao Thuan had to rely on a pile of protective charms. As soon as he entered, the door slammed shut, the space was too quiet, and there was not a sound of insects. The man claimed that the homeowner needed quiet, which was why he did it. As they walked up the corridor, they heard a woman's voice singing. The other two were ready to leave Xiao Thuan there if he was scared. You intended to stay, but suddenly felt a chilling sensation down your spine. Out of nowhere, a red shadow lunged at you, causing you to scream. The other two couldn't believe your story about the red shadow until Feng Vim noticed that the guide had vanished, and the fruit on the tree had transformed. A red cloth also appeared, enveloping them. At this moment, the guide finally revealed their true nature. They had betrayed their own clan and collaborated with another. Feng Vim and Lang Fai rushed out to battle the tree roots that had sprouted. Meanwhile, Tu Thuan dashed toward the gate. However, the guide triggered a dangerous barrier that engulfed the house, draining their life force. Clearly, the Lac Tran clan had meticulously planned this betrayal. Tu Thuan almost got knocked down by the tree roots while saving Lang Fai. Both Lang Fai and Feng Vim woke up amidst the rubble, and luckily, Tu Thuan was unharmed. Although the barrier wasn't fully sealed, a red demon cloth appeared, blocking their escape. The other two had to fight the roots, and Lang Fai even threw an explosive pill at the ghostly figure. Thanks to that, Van Fai reappeared. Meanwhile, Tu Thuan hurled dirt at the demon and ran toward the door. However, it pulled him back with the cloth, sealing the barrier completely. Fueled by anger, Tu Thuan fought back, creating another opening. But because of Van Fai, he decided to stay. According to Van Fai, Lac Tran had indeed allied with the Huyet Ki clan, enemies of their Lin Ki clan. The tree roots now attacked, forcing Lang Fai and Van Fai to leave first, while Tu Thuan and Feng Vim remained trapped inside. Feng Vim seized this opportunity to take Tu Thuan's life, luring the roots toward him. However, Tu Thuan's passion for life drove him to escape. Just as he broke free, Feng Vim threw an explosive pill at him, intending to shatter his bones. Unexpectedly, it propelled Tu Thuan out of the barrier. Feng Vim, consumed by resentment, remained trapped. Tu Thuan returned to the others, weeping bitterly for Feng Vim's demise. They believed Feng Vim sacrificed himself to save Tu Thuan. Meanwhile, Lac Tran's ancestor reprimanded the ghostly figure for letting Tu Thuan slip away. Lang Fai grew anxious, and even though Van Fai was at the seventh realm, he struggled against these foes. Lang Fai urged Tu Thuan to fight, or they would all perish. Seeing Van Fai recover, Tu Thuan mentioned how worried his younger sister had been. Van Fai then revealed his investigation. Lac Tran had betrayed their clan, committing numerous murders to activate the forbidden barrier. Without their combined efforts, Tu Thuan would have become part of the barrier. Now, the ghostly figure and its master approached. Lang Fai, injured but determined, entrusted the mission to Tu Thuan, while the ghostly figure continued the fight. Xiao Thuan then ran away to save his life. He could not let himself die before achieving true enlightenment. As he ran, he thought about the two seniors behind him facing death, and the promise to bring his little sister's brother back home made it impossible for him to concentrate on running. He fell down a slope and did not know what to do. Lang Fai decided she must protect her honor and would not surrender. When they drew their swords to deal with her, Xiao Thuan turned back and grabbed the sword. He could not leave them behind. He decided to protect them both from now on. Xiao Thuan then turned to fight, and his skills were not bad at all. He took on both opponents alone and quickly dealt with them. The ghostly figure shot a palm strike at him, but he was not injured. He kept advancing no matter how many times the figure threw attacks at him. When the figure switched to throwing knives, Xiao Thuan quickly closed in for hand-to-hand combat and successfully punched him in the mouth, shattering it. The figure was so angry that he decided to trade life for life with Xiao Thuan. He summoned a giant monster, and Xiao Thuan still decided to stand his ground. Xiao Thuan summoned a furnace made of spiritual energy and struck the figure on the head. At that moment, Lang Fai realized that Xiao Thuan's strength was much greater than hers. He then collapsed, and the barrier at the Lac Tran house also disappeared. The people of Lac Tran realized that the ghostly figure had died and could not believe that someone of level 8 could lose. The young master of the Tran family had to reveal himself and decided to go into battle to deal with the situation. Xiao Thuan then woke up on Lang Fai's lap. She wanted him to stay calm because he had been stabbed with a knife. She would help him pull out the knife and apply pressure points to stop the bleeding. He overreacted, so she decisively pulled out the knife and applied the pressure points in just a few seconds. She did not know where his courage from earlier had gone. He was tired and wanted to rest for a while. Lang Fai was embarrassed and pushed him away. Yun Fei had to praise Xiao Thuan because in the half-year they had not met, he had practiced such advanced techniques. He did not dare to accept the praise because he was still only at level 5, and the move he had just performed was done unconsciously and was not yet perfected. Suddenly, he noticed an unusual silence around him. Suddenly, an arrow flew toward them, and Tu Thuan stepped forward to shield Lang Fai. He urged both of them to move quickly. His blood stained the ground, and the Tran family had already traced it, following the trail. The young master recognized the arrow and sensed that this blood belonged to a special disciple, one capable of countering his forbidden techniques. The Tuathuan group ran relentlessly, enduring at least 3 days until they escaped this perilous place. Despite his injuries, Tuathuan worried primarily about Van Phi. Exhausted, he believed he might need another lifetime to repay the debt of gratitude. Tuathuan encouraged Van Phi not to lose hope and guided him to the cave where they had sought refuge upon arrival. Van Phi wanted to leave the remaining elixirs for their younger siblings. He knew that using them himself would deplete their strength, and although Tuathuan was powerful, he neared his limits and couldn't sustain the fight much longer. Tuathuan blocked the cave entrance, insisting everyone rest and recover. However, Van Phi sensed a formidable presence approaching. Outside, the Tran family still had a young master who had reached the 9th realm. Suddenly, an intruder arrived, but before he could report to the young master, Tuathuan snapped his neck. However, the young master had already initiated a formation, turning the sky crimson. Both senior disciples urged Tuathuan to flee, but he suspected their ruse. No longer a child, he chose to stay. Lang Phi risked his life to force Tuathuan to leave, preferring self-sacrifice over falling into enemy hands. Both seniors knew the extent of Tuathuan's efforts and considered him their sole hope. Lang Phi's determination prevented Tuathuan from escaping. Both seniors hoped to buy Tuathuan some time, but they didn't anticipate his unexpected move. Tuathuan ran toward the Tran family, rallying them to pursue him. The young master focused all his strength on Tuathuan, while the injured seniors would be dealt with later. Tuathuan swiftly confronted the first assailant, dispatching him. When the second attacker approached, Tuathuan's technique hit an illusion. The third assailant charged from a different direction, but Tuathuan swiftly snapped his neck. Arrows flew simultaneously, forcing you to take cover. The archer instructed his companions to search for others, preventing Tuathuan from stalling any longer. When you rushed out, you immediately encountered an assailant. However, upon identifying his position, you hurled a wooden stake back at him. You had to hide momentarily to remove the arrow and staunch the bleeding. The young master marveled at Tuathuan's resilience and decided to widen the pursuit. Eager to meet you face to face, he ordered his group to search near the border. Meanwhile, the other assailants continued their sweep. Tuathuan overheard their discovery of blood near the border, blood he knew belonged to his senior disciples. To attract their attention, he intentionally revealed himself. You lost count of how many enemies you faced, but you returned to assist your seniors. Despite being detected, they still needed help. The two pursuers caught up with your seniors, but you insisted they keep running without worrying about you. Lang Phi had no choice but to urge Van Phi to continue while you stayed behind to confront another adversary. You engaged in combat, using a wooden sword to fend off opponents wielding iron blades. Your reinforced wooden sword shattered their weapons. Despite your bleeding wounds, you defiantly challenged anyone else to step forward. Suddenly, a giant snake appeared, coiling around you and binding you to a tree. The young master emerged, determined to eliminate you on the spot. He acknowledged your strength but believed your time had come. He ordered the snake to strike. However, you regained consciousness inside the snake's belly. Your mother's image appeared, urging you to survive. You broke through and escaped. The young master, impressed by your breakthrough to the 6th realm, attacked relentlessly. Although you fought back, you were clearly overmatched. He seized your arm and decisively snapped it. Meanwhile, Van Phi, unable to continue, instructed Lang Phi to return to the border and inform the sect. Tuathuan, temporarily recovering the use of his arm, resolved not to yield and vowed to save his senior disciples. He threw the furnace at his head, making him realize that he was not to be underestimated. He used a secret technique and claimed that no one who had seen this move of his had survived. He drew his own blood to create a large blade that descended upon Tuathuan. The beloved pot flew to his defense. Although it could not block everything, it at least helped Tuathuan avoid most of the damage. The shockwave from the blow blew Lang Phi away from a distance. Tuathuan was still alive, but the young master decided to go and deal with Tuathuan's two seniors, thinking Tuathuan would soon die anyway. But Tuathuan rushed forward and pushed him down the mountain, while Lang Phi managed to return to the border. Tuathuan had collapsed, but the young master was still not willing to let him go. He continuously beat Tuathuan even though he himself was not in good shape. Lang Phi managed to crawl to a stone tablet and report back to the sect, while the young master decided to use the blood knife to finish Tuathuan. But even though Tuathuan was stabbed, he still held the young master's hand and delivered a punch straight to the throat, dragging the young master along. The sun had risen, and Tuathuan saw that he had succeeded. Meanwhile, the news had been reported back to the sect. Mr. Lai heard the loud ringing of the bell and knew that something significant had happened. The messenger informed the sect leader, who called for all disciples to halt their activities and gather immediately. The sect leader announced that the Lactran family had forgotten their gratitude and rebelled, and now Bok Xiao Thuan was fighting alone, with his life or death uncertain. He ordered everyone to march out and rescue the returning disciples. At that time, the Lactran family was still unaware of any news when suddenly the earth shook. Hundreds to thousands of disciples from Ling Shui had arrived and rescued Yunfei. Mr. Lai delivered a blow that completely incinerated the Lactran family. Hearing that Xiao Thuan and Lang Fai were still missing, Lang Fai had two people come to her rescue and restore her, but as soon as she woke up, she immediately ran to find Xiao Thuan, while the others and Mr. Lai were also searching for Xiao Thuan. Seeing the bodies defeated by Xiao Thuan, Mr. Lai could discern what had happened. He heard someone had found a clue and recognized it as a piece from the clothing he had given to Yunfei to send to Xiao Thuan. He suspected that Xiao Thuan was in grave danger, especially since the traces found were caused by a level 9 expert's full force. Mr. Lai thought he might have arrived too late. Lang Fai also arrived and could not hold back her tears upon seeing the remaining piece of fabric. Mr. Lai instructed the disciples to continue the search. When the clan leaders returned, they no longer sensed any trace of Tu Thuan's spiritual energy. They believed he was truly gone. His contributions were immense, having helped the Lin Qi clan avert an unforeseen disaster. They established a shrine for Tu Thuan. Despite their senior disciples' instructions not to cry, tears still flowed. The younger sister blamed Van Fai for failing to bring Tu Thuan back. The clan leader publicly acknowledged Tu Thuan as an illustrious disciple and insisted that everyone recognize his significant contributions. The younger sister couldn't accept this truth, while Lai Tianxin continued to regret his decision to take Tu Thuan up the mountain, leading to these events. The Feng Vim family also received protection from the clan leader. Van Fai and Lang Fai were promoted to internal disciples, on the path to becoming pillars of the clan. However, Lang Fai declined, leaving everyone puzzled. She forfeited a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, opting to guard the Lactran border instead. Lang Fai still believed Tu Thuan was alive and wanted to wait for his return. She remained steadfast before his shrine. In the end, he saved her from countless deaths. So no matter where or how long, she will still wait for him to return. At this moment, Tu Thuan is truly not dead. He woke up and found that his body was not injured. He thought he had been taken down to the underworld because he saw the corpse of that young master. However, suddenly an old man appeared and scolded him. Then he saw the old man sucking away the young master's corpse. The old man informed him that he was not dead, which made him rejoice. Later, he intended to find the two seniors, but he ran into a barrier. The old man told him that he wasn't strong enough to pass through this barrier. His body had absorbed life force from the surroundings, allowing him to recover. The old man provided a medicinal pill to restore his spiritual energy and promised to return in 2 weeks. Tu Thuan remembered the old man's actions and worried he was being raised for slaughter. He used a cauldron to refine the medicinal pill before consuming it. He didn't expect the medicinal pill to be so powerful, forcing him to endure. But someone was waiting for him outside. That person didn't intend to harm him, they only wanted to help him break through his limits. As fate would have it, they gave him a secret technique to learn second-level immortality arts. Afterward, they left, instructing him to keep their encounter a secret. He thanked them and learned that Lactran had been destroyed, so he decided to return to his sect. He was relieved that his two senior disciples were safe. Meanwhile, Lang Fai remained at the border, despite the black-clothed individuals urging her to return to her master. They believed that after half a year, Tu Thuan was likely dead. However, she stubbornly stayed, even if it meant facing punishment from her master. During her patrol, she accidentally bumped into a beggar. She wanted to give him some food, and when he thanked her, she recognized his voice. It was definitely Tu Thuan. She chased after him, calling his name, and he truly stopped. They reunited, and she fed him and provided new clothes. After half a year of wandering in the mountains, he worried about his senior disciples. Now that he knew they were safe, he could finally rest. Curious about why she had come, she confessed that she was waiting for him. She had only one relative, her father, but he lacked the sincerity Tu Thuan showed her. He placed his hand on her shoulder and vowed to stay by her side, appearing whenever she needed him. Later, he fell asleep with his head on her lap, knowing that everything she had was built on deception. They shared a temporary farewell kiss, and the next morning, when Tu Thuan woke up, he thought the kiss was a dream. But Lang Fai was gone, leaving behind her bag. He assumed she had returned to their sect. Meanwhile, at the sect, those whom Tu Thuan had taught drew paintings of him. The sect leader even commissioned a statue in his honor, although its face bore no resemblance to Tu Thuan. Suddenly, he piloted the flying ship straight into the head of the statue, cracking its neck. He also appeared before everyone, causing his little sister to cry out. The others then waited outside for Xiao Thuan, while he was being taken inside by the sect leaders for questioning. He complained about everything and cried, trying to look pitiful, claiming he kept his torn clothes to return and make a show of it. Hearing that he had been accepted as a disciple by the sect leader was quite impressive, but as for tangible rewards, he saw nothing. So he tried even harder to tell his sad story to see if he could get anything more, but to no avail. At that moment, Mr. Lai arrived, and Xiao Thuan immediately burst into tears and ran to hug him. Mr. Lai also placed his hand on Xiao Thuan's head and blamed himself for not protecting him completely. Seeing Xiao Thuan's complaints, the sect leader reluctantly gave him 2 magical weapons. The first was a shield that could block the attack of someone who had reached the second realm, and the second was a precious sword containing a spiritual beast. He could use it to fly, but his current skill level was not yet sufficient to wield it, let alone use it. He wanted to exchange it for something else, but the sect leader said that the Grand Hall was not a place for bargaining. He then walked out proudly and met his fellow disciples. His little sister cried upon seeing him again, and they led him away to recount the events of the past half-year. His little sister took him to the arena where the tree that Mr. Lai had planted for him and Lang Fai to compete had grown significantly. Xiao Thuan then asked around for news of Lang Fai, but no one knew. Half a month passed, and his little sister knew Xiao Thuan was still worried about Lang Fai. She believed Lang Fai just had her own troubles and tasks to complete and would return to the sect once finished. He knew his little sister was jealous of Lang Fai, so he thanked her for choosing to stay by his side. The next morning, Bao Tai came to find Xiao Thuan and told him that the disciples had come to give him gifts and that his becoming a glorious disciple meant that wherever he went, everyone bowed in greeting. He took the sword given by the sect leader to show off to the disciples, causing a commotion among them all. The sect leaders also heard that Xiao Thuan had recently been causing chaos in the sect and hoped he would not cause trouble up here. But as soon as they mentioned it, Xiao Thuan took out the sword to practice flying and disrupted the sect leaders' discussion. Many people now began to say that Xiao Thuan was taking advantage of his status to act recklessly. He noticed that the sect had been unusually quiet lately. Suddenly, he met Tom Kai again. Previously, they were fellow disciples, but now he spoke disrespectfully to Tom Kai because of his status, causing her to dislike him and leave. He and Bao Tai rode on the sword to follow her, but because he was not proficient, he fell on the way. He then accidentally heard the voice of Tran Fai. He was jealous of Xiao Thuan's reputation, so Xiao Thuan went down to greet him. In front of Xiao Thuan, he still had to bow and greet properly, but Xiao Thuan pressed on, forcing him to invoke his master, Thien Hu, as a threat. However, Xiao Thuan did not know about this person, so he continued to press forward. Suddenly, a flying sword appeared, and the cultivator named Thien Hu materialized. He no longer cared about Tu Thuan's title, this was his territory, and Tu Thuan was insignificant here. Both sides exchanged light sword techniques, but Tu Thuan's moves couldn't match his opponent's. The cultivator drove him away to avoid disrupting his cultivation. Furious, Tu Thuan vowed to settle the score. That evening, the younger sister's family planned to ambush him, but she refused to let it happen. The next morning, Tu Thuan brought household items to the apothecary to exchange for rare herbs, intending to break through his limits and seek revenge. However, he could only exchange one herb because he was a poor nobody. The apothecary suggested he refine pills and auction them in 3 months. If he was lucky, the pills he produced would be worth 500 spirit stones each. Hearing this, Tu Thuan returned to start pill refining. Despite his theoretical knowledge, the results were mostly subpar. The pill furnace began shaking, forcing him outside, where he found a drop chest of precious herbs. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed, and the auction was underway. Tu Thuan tried to remain inconspicuous, but Van Fai noticed him. She assumed he was there for fun. Van Fai, usually cheerful, now seemed hesitant, hiding behind Tu Thuan. She explained that they hadn't heard from Lang Fai, and not seeing him for 3 months left her uncertain. Before they could finish their conversation, the auction began. Bidders on the second floor rang bells to place bids. The first item up for auction was a horn from a jade dragon. Bidding quickly reached 1,000 spirit stones, and Tu Thuan eagerly anticipated the auction of his own pills. Suddenly, he noticed Tom Kai, so he called her, which made him discovered by those who had been waiting for him to appear for 3 months, and now he's here. Afterward, the auction continued until evening, and every item was worth thousands. However, when he presented the pill he had painstakingly crafted over several months, people criticized it, leaving him angry. He argued with the bidder, explaining the effort he had put into creating it, and everyone paid a high price for their purchases. His own pill lacked appeal, and no one wanted to buy it. So, he decided to bid on his own creation, raising suspicions among others. But ultimately, Tu Thuan outbid everyone, leaving him with no gains and impending financial loss. He had produced 3 pills. The second pill had undergone 3 rounds of testing in the same pot, but people considered it wasteful to test 3 times for a single elixir. On the third pill, the turtle symbol appeared unexpectedly, revealing it as the product of the person who had completed the 10-stone challenge, a fact Tu Thuan discerned. Everyone scrambled to buy it, but Tu Thuan and Tom Kai joined forces to acquire the small turtle's treasure. Since Tom Kai organized the auction, she had more money and outbid even Tu Thuan. Van Phi noticed that his younger sister was becoming more cunning, and Tu Thuan's concealment of his identity as the turtle's owner slightly irked Tom Kai. She assumed he admired the small turtle and wanted to buy it for him. Thus, he gained money without losing the item and decided to reveal the truth: he was the owner of the small turtle. Others overheard and mocked him for hiding his identity, while Tu Thuan thought Tom Kai had lied to her all along and ran away. As soon as he fled, many women sought him as a husband. 3 months earlier, they had performed a betrothal ceremony using a box of herbs, which he had accepted. Tom Kai tried to save Tu Thuan, but she couldn't compete with the other women. Fortunately, his family redeemed him by offering a betrothal gift. Although it seemed appealing, Tom Kai believed she wasn't worthy of Tu Thuan. She felt embarrassed because her family also intended to arrange a marriage with him. She had nothing but money, while he possessed abundant talent. Being around him sometimes made her feel insecure. Tu Thuan ran away, and the martial arts masters declared that he was too young to marry and should focus on training. They declared his romantic entanglements for the next 100 years to ensure his focus on cultivation. He found that becoming a glorious disciple was not as pleasant as expected. He then angrily went to practice alchemy, setting his sights solely on achieving immortality. He was so clumsy that he destroyed the entire alchemy area, leading the head of the alchemy district to expel him and ban him from entering again. The sect leader discussed with Mr. Lai about Xiao Thuan's recent disruptive behavior, but Mr. Lai no longer wanted to manage him and wished to let him learn on his own and gradually become talented. He then practiced alchemy at home and successfully created a pill to break through to the next realm, but it still wasn't quite right. The pill then fell and landed in front of a rabbit. He thought he had lost another opportunity, but the rabbit inadvertently saved him when the pill turned out to be defective. Unsure if the new pill he made was any better, he went to find a test subject. He found a monkey, called it over, and fed it the pill, but it slapped it away. It began to mock and mimic him, so he performed tricks to make the monkey laugh and threw the pill into its mouth. But the only thing that happened was that he received a biological bomb from it. He continued to make more pills and fed them to a bird, but the bird also fell dead. He repeated the process and then realized that perhaps he should not harm innocent creatures anymore. Suddenly, he encountered the chicken that had once eaten his elixir. It swallowed a pill he made and walked away as if nothing had happened, but the creatures that had eaten his pills were now rising from the dead. He then didn't know how to remove the impurities from the pills, and suddenly he was struck by lightning, which gradually removed the impurities from the pill. Realizing that lightning was the solution, he left the pills inside the house while he hid outside. Suddenly, he heard someone imitating him and discovered the rabbit. It had become a spirit and mimicked his voice before leaving. Knowing that his alchemy would eventually become known, he decided to continue practicing. In the following months, the sect continuously experienced rain and thunderstorms. The precious chickens raised were dealt with by the evolved chicken, leaving people unable to cope. The chicken even revealed that it was Xiao Thuan who caused all these incidents. After the rain, acid rain followed. Tom Kai was walking on the road, getting soaked by the rain, which ruined all her belongings. Tu Thuan had endured enough from Tom Kai. His recent actions against the entire martial arts sect had pushed them to their limits. They decided to unite and deal with him. At this point, Tu Thuan had successfully refined pills like others, and the sect leader personally sought him out to inquire about his actions. The leader destroyed Tu Thuan's house and punished him for endangering the entire sect and harming the precious bird under his care. Tu Thuan realized that this bird had become the leader's cherished pet. Without allowing Tu Thuan to explain, the leader wanted him to face the consequences. However, Lai Tianxin intervened to protect him. Lai Tianxin believed that Tu Thuan's dedication to cultivation was commendable, even in the face of failure. The successful pill refinement would benefit the sect. Amidst heated arguments, a rabbit appeared, mimicking the leader's voice. It even imitated Tu Thuan and Lai Tianxin, revealing their secrets. Unable to save him any longer, Lai Tianxin demanded that Tu Thuan take responsibility. Now, the monkey that Tu Thuan had fed pills contained the soul of the leader's master, Han Tong. Originally, the monkey had transformed into a spirit, but now it could return due to the shifting energy of the entire Lin Qi mountain. Lai Tianxin punished Tu Thuan, who accepted blame for inadvertently allowing the rabbit to overhear their secrets, but he wants Tu Thuan not to mention that from now on. Hearing that Tu Thuan want to reach a new realm, Lai Tianxin thinks Tu Thuan a bit anxious, but that doesn't mean he is not allowed. Afterward, Lai Tianxin forgives him, and he asked Lai Tianxin for some techniques to cultivate. Lai Tianxin reluctantly lends him a book and leaves. However, just as he departs, he encounters his junior sister, who is also a sect leader. She happens to be someone that Master Li secretly admires. He even contemplates advancing to a new realm before confessing his feelings. The book Lai Tianxin gave Tu Thuan promised unlimited wealth. However, his martial sister believed that Tu Thuan's quick learning would lead to mastery, and in a year, the meridians would open. While this place facilitated new realms, the battlefield there would be brutal. Mr. Lai is still worried that Xiao Thuan will die in vain. His junior sister noticed that since the incident with the Lac Tran family, Mr. Lai seems to no longer want Xiao Thuan to risk his life anymore. For 3 months straight, his junior sister and Bao Tai have been waiting outside Mr. Li's house for Xiao Thuan. At this time, he is practicing a new cultivation technique. He seems to feel the earth and sky around him and is freely soaring in his mind when he suddenly reaches the first level of the technique. It requires the body to be as strong as an elephant. The elephant dissolves and merges into his body, binding him and confronting him with the second level. The soul must be as strong as a dragon. These chains were told by the mysterious old man last time to be the chains of life and cannot be broken, but he still decides to take a risk. Then he wakes up in a vast sea. Mr. Lai sees that he has almost learned the technique given to him and has created a separate area for himself. That night, Mr. Lai told Xiao Thuan to follow him. He dropped Xiao Thuan into a dangerous forest and said if he could get out, he would answer any questions Xiao Thuan had. Many others are also being tested here. He then sank into the mud and luckily met Yun Fei, who told him that this was a test to select the heavenly pride for the south. The two got lost in a field of giant falling swords, forcing them to focus on dodging. The sect leader finds this test to be very difficult, but Mr. Lai thinks it is necessary for a breakthrough. Only 10 people are chosen to compete for the north and south sides. Meanwhile, Yun Fei and Xiao Thuan are being overtaken by someone using electricity. This person is Lu Tian, and his running without looking at the road causes Xiao Thuan to call him a brat. Offended, even though he is in a hurry, he turns around to push both of them down. Xiao Thuan accidentally falls down a cliff, so Lu Tian ignores him and continues the race. Xiao Thuan falls into a nest of snakes, and it turns out this place is where that monkey was studying formations. Seeing Xiao Thuan again, he is using poison to scare the snakes. The snakes, wanting to live, avoid him, but the monkey quickly flies over and steals the pill, forcing Xiao Thuan to run again. During that time, there were only 11 remaining participants. Thuan Quan, who was in the lead previously, and Lu Thien were currently competing for the top position. At this moment, the other martial artists had to pay attention to Tu Thuan. The head elder still held a grudge against him, hoping he wouldn't make it through. Aware that he couldn't stay here forever, Tu Thuan took out a few more pills to deal with the snakes. Once they were no longer moving, he quickly moved forward. Suddenly, he noticed that the snakes had been mesmerized and transformed into various animals, from cats to dogs. Furthermore, a large snake approached him while others were in a tense race. Fortunately, Xe Vang, the Snake King, carried him towards the finish line. Just as he was about to reach it, the effects of the medicine wore off, causing Xe Vang to throw him aside. However, luck was on his side, and he was thrown directly to the finish line. His unexpected arrival left everyone astonished, and those who followed closely behind were surprised to be overtaken by him. Out of nowhere, the snakes surged forward, forcing the leader to chase them away. Despite considering Tu Thuan a troublemaker, there was no denying that he reached the finish line first. Later, the leader revealed that the top 10 participants would represent the southern faction in the upcoming Thien Kyo competition between the north and south. These top-ranked individuals would be allowed to enter the secret realm for cultivation until the designated day. Although Tu Thuan didn't know what this sacred place was, Thuan Quan believed it didn't matter because surviving the north-south battle would be nearly impossible. Van Phi confirmed that it wasn't an exaggeration. The northern faction was notorious for its brutality, where casualties from swords and combat were unavoidable. Lai Tianxin, Mr. Lai, understood what Tu Thuan was contemplating. He later caught him trying to escape and brought him back to the mountain where they first met. Mr. Lai wanted Tu Thuan to recall his words from that day, about wanting to achieve longevity. However, achieving longevity required reaching the second realm to cultivate the elusive Kim Dan, golden elixir. The path to the new realm lay ahead of him, and Mr. Lai didn't force him but offered a choice: pursue longevity or live a peaceful life until the end. Tu Thuan then took Bao Tai, his companion, to explore the enemy's territory in the north. However, Bao Tai warned him about the 4 great celestial warriors of the north, who were extremely formidable. First among them were the siblings Yuyan Ni, who could control a phoenix and use mystical arts, and Tun Van, her older brother. His specialty lies in using and controlling poisonous insects to drain his opponent's spiritual energy. The third person is Bak Han, who has an extremely aggressive pet and specializes in fighting alongside it. As for the last person, it's inconvenient to mention, but that would be Kui Na. He spends the entire year cultivating on the mountain, with mysterious behavior and expertise in demonic techniques, particularly the renowned Kui De Han, Demon Night Walk. Tu Thuan knows that encountering him would mean certain death. However, just at that moment, the sibling pair walked by. Tun Van noticed an intruder and had the poisonous insects wither a nearby tree, but both of them managed to escape. Later, Tu Thuan wanted Bao Tai to return ahead while he continued to investigate. He then stumbled upon Yuyan Ni bathing in a lotus pond. Thinking she was practicing her cultivation, he observed her. However, a mocking rabbit interrupted him, imitating his voice and fleeing. Tu Thuan chased after it and was discovered. A single slap wasn't enough punishment. Yuyan Ni continued to follow him, leading him unintentionally into forbidden territory. His flying ability vanished, and Yuyan Ni found his predicament amusing. Meanwhile, the 2 martial sects from the north were worried about their impending defeat. They typically fought by taming and using dangerous creatures, but now their ferocious beasts were dwindling in vitality. The sacred beasts were aging and dying in the abyss. It was during this time that Tu Thuan fell into the abyss and encountered a formidable creature. He knew this place was perilous, but he didn't expect the creature to possess such immense power: a dragon. The dragon dragged him before it, shocking him. Desperate to be released, Tu Thuan offered everything he had, including a seemingly worthless elixir pill. Surprisingly, the dragon desired that very pill. In exchange for his freedom, Tu Thuan promised to create more elixirs for the dragon. The dragon agreed to these terms, warning that failure would result in his permanent company. Tu Thuan requested some materials from the dragon's body to craft the elixirs. Unhappy with the conditions, the dragon demanded to consume him. Tu Thuan settled for extracting a small amount of its blood. He then created an enormous elixir pill for the dragon. When the dragon consumed it, its strength surged, illuminating the ancient drawings on the walls. It lifted Xiao Thuan up and transformed into a drawing in the only empty area. Xiao Thuan then received power from this area, and a month later, he woke up at Mr. Li's house. Bao Tai informed him that Mr. Lai had accidentally found him on the north shore, and if he slept any longer, he would miss the Heavenly Pride tournament tomorrow. The next day, before the martial arts competition began, there was already a heated verbal exchange between the 2 sides. The elders then appeared and personally supervised this competition. Since the North had won the last time, they were allowed to bring 12 participants, while the South only had 10. Those who win this time will have the honor of entering the sacred land. As soon as the start was announced, the leading Heavenly Pride of the North, Guaya, also appeared. A stage then appeared in the middle of a lake, and Shang Quan confidently stepped up as the first challenger. A commoner went up first to receive a move from the Elder of the North, noting that this year the South was also formidable. They had heard of the glorious disciple of the South but saw no sign of him, so they thought he had fled. But Xiao Thuan was just fully prepared and started heading to the arena. In the first match, although fighting an unknown, Shang Quan struggled to win. Lu Tian then entered the arena and boldly declared a challenge to Guaya. Lu Tian then summoned lightning just as Xiao Thuan flew by, causing him to be struck and fall. Xiao Thuan and Lu Tian turned to argue, leading the sect leader to ask him to wait behind the scenes. The subsequent match continued, with both fighters moving at speeds that made them invisible to the audience. Lu Tian was then pushed back, and Guaya began to display his famous demonic technique, summoning a tornado. Lu Tian charged straight into it, preparing to face the opponent's renowned move, Guaya Xing. Knowing for sure that this move would be lethal, the elder had to intervene and stop it, declaring Guaya the winner. Demonic technique is considered one of the strongest martial arts, and the only one that can match it is the water marsh technique. The water marsh technique has long been in the hands of the North, but even they have not been able to learn it, and it is clear that Xiao Thuan was lucky to have learned it from that dragon. Xiao Thuan was then challenged by a young man from the Northern Heavenly Pride, Bak Han, who controls beasts. He sent a wolf after Xiao Thuan, who was about to use a talisman for protection. But the talismans flew away, forcing him to feed the wolf a pill. Unexpectedly, the dog was instantly tamed by him. It obeyed Xiao Thuan just to eat more pills, but as the original owner, Bak Han could still pull it away from the temptation to return. However, every time it was about to charge, Xiao Thuan threw out more pills. Bak Han tried to control the wolf to avoid them all, but he did not notice that the pills were now all around him. Tu Thuan triggered all those explosives, causing him to be enveloped in the scent of elixirs. As a result, he was once again attacked by the wolf he had previously tamed, which harmed the northern faction. Everyone accused Tu Thuan of playing a dangerous game. The northern elder demanded punishment, but Lai Tianxin stepped in, asserting that Tu Thuan hadn't violated any rules. Suddenly, the sky filled with numerous birds and a dangerous creature awakened. The northern matriarch approached and asked if the elixir was genuinely of Tu Thuan's making. If so, she wanted to request it and obtain the formula. Tu Thuan was taken to the main hall, where the faction leader asserted that it was his right to decide whether to share the formula. Tu Thuan had already provided the formula, but he claimed to have forgotten the final ingredient due to a recent threat. The matriarch reluctantly offered a precious treasure in exchange for the complete formula, but Lai Tianxin wasn't satisfied. He wanted additional water manipulation techniques, as no one in the north had mastered them. Reluctantly, the matriarch agreed, recognizing that Tu Thuan's elixirs were essential for preserving the northern spirit beasts. After the successful transaction, the two elders left. Bao Tai came to celebrate with Tu Thuan, but he had disappeared. Tu Thuan returned to the abyss because the ancient manual contained drawings of nurturing spirit beasts, which he remembered seeing there. However, when he searched for the dragon, it was nowhere to be found. The manual suddenly flew up and split apart. Lai Tianxin's interest in the water vein technique stemmed from Tu Thuan's entry into the overseas realm. Few had ever accessed it, and it was a necessary step for mastering water vein. His words proved true, as Tu Thuan had indeed returned to the overseas realm. Caught in a powerful wave, the two techniques he had recently learned merged into one. The dragon reappeared and found Tu Thuan intriguing, offering to assist him. Meanwhile, Tun Van and Yuyan Ni were plotting to defeat Tu Thuan in the top 5 battle. Suddenly, all the northern faction's spirit beasts took flight. The dragon summoned them for Tu Thuan's observation. The water vein technique required him to observe hundreds of creatures, starting with chickens and including Bak Han's wolves. Not all creatures were cooperative, so Tu Thuan had to gain their recognition. Even Tun Van's beetles were called forth. The next day, Yuyan Ni, Thuang Quan, and Kui Na advanced. Another contender defeated Tom Kai and entered the next round. Finally, Tu Thuan and Tun Van faced off. Just as they were about to concede defeat to Tu Thuan, he appeared on the scene. Ready for a confrontation, he awaited Tun Van's lesson, but the beetles remained elusive. Tu Thuan replaced him and called the beetles, which now obeyed Tu Thuan more than their previous master. They served as a support for Tu Thuan and executed his commands. He instructed them to take Tun Van and achieve victory effortlessly. Subsequently, Tu Thuan revealed that he had merely observed the northern faction's spirit beasts in combat, which infuriated everyone there. They decided to forego using the beasts and instead each gave him a punch. The remaining 5 participants would continue drawing lots to determine their matchups. The northern elder was confident that Tu Thuan wouldn't learn the water vein technique, so they would wait for an opportunity to reclaim it. Tu Thuan nervously drew a ballot and luckily picked an empty one. The next battle featured Yuyan Ni against Kui Na. Despite the northern faction's decline, they were compelled to advance by stepping on each other's heads. Yuyan Ni summoned her phoenix for an attack, but Kui Na deflected every blow. Eventually, the dust obscured Yuyan Ni's vision, and Kui Na seized the opportunity to defeat her. The senior disciples from the Fire Peach Hall arrived to cheer for Tu Thuan. Next up was Thuang Quan, who had previously defeated Tom Kai. Thuang Quan swiftly overcame his opponent using superior sword techniques, securing 2 spots for the southern faction. However, the northern faction only needed Kui Na. In the subsequent match, Tu Thuan faced Thuang Quan. Considering their shared lineage, Tu Thuan decided not to exploit his higher position and offered to concede for the overall situation. But Thuang Quan, harboring resentment toward Tu Thuan, attacked unexpectedly. Fortunately, Tu Thuan evaded, but fans criticized Thuang Quan for his underhanded tactics. Thuang Quan claimed he would replace Tu Thuan's parents in teaching him a lesson. Just as he finished speaking, he unleashed a barrage of sword strikes. Enraged, Tu Thuan retaliated with a powerful punch, sending Thuang Quan flying out of the arena. Kui Na wasted no time and attacked Tu Thuan immediately, hurling him into a statue. Despite a cracked headpiece, Tu Thuan remained standing. Kui Na continued his assault, but Tu Thuan deftly dodged the final blow. Focused, Tu Thuan observed Kui Na's movements and countered his attack. Tu Thuan became the first to injure Kui Na, and the northern faction finally realized that his audacious actions against Lac Tran's house were no mere boast. Tu Thuan then evaded Kui Na's dark attack and retaliated, breaking the armor on his arm. He realized that the final piece of the water vein technique was right before him, so he used his furnace to withstand the assault. Lai Tianxin didn't intervene because he knew Tu Thuan could handle it. Tu Thuan used the technique of transforming sea water into a powerful force for his furnace. Kui Na had to break the seal and sacrifice some life force to enhance Kui Dahan, aiming to completely defeat Tu Thuan. The entire sequence of moves exploded, yet Kui Na remained standing. Tu Thuan's fate hung in the balance. Kui Na wanted to declare victory, but Tu Thuan clung to life thanks to the shield provided by the faction leader. Determined, Tu Thuan decided to defeat Kui Na, even if it meant risking everything. He used all the items he had practiced with, while Kui Na unleashed the ultimate Kui Dahan technique, a higher-level move that even alarmed the northern elders. Despite this, Tu Thuan's tools held up, and when Kui Na attacked, he used the Golden Crow sword to block the blow. The sword was knocked away, but Tu Thuan successfully employed the water vein technique. He splashed water, dissolving Kui Na's Kui Dahan. Although Kui Na realized his own technique wouldn't work, he remained defiant. The faction leader believed that once Tu Thuan reached the next level, he could summon a terrifying holy beast. Suddenly, Tu Thuan encountered a problem. Lai Tianxin sensed an ominous sign and rushed to suppress it. The other sect members also had to step in to restrain Tu Thuan. Despite their combined efforts, the corrosion continued unchecked. Lai Tianxin risked his life to restore Tu Thuan, but it wasn't enough. The faction leader realized Tu Thuan had gained insight too early, and just when all seemed lost, the dragon from the abyss arrived to save him from the erosion. Tu Thuan was restored to safety. Lai Tianxin rejoiced at his survival. Later, the faction leader asked what Tu Thuan had glimpsed in the overseas realm. Still groggy from awakening, Tu Thuan saw something in the sky. It was a thorn from a creature called the Destiny Chi Lin. A month later, Tu Thuan and the top 5 were taken to a sacred place for awakening. Although Tu Thuan awakened before breaking through the realm like others, he didn't lose heart. He would be the first to enter the sacred place and received support from many. Therefore, he promised not to disappoint them, but he wouldn't forget his original purpose, to achieve longevity.